Welcome to our media channel. Here we try to share wisdom in detail, in depth. If you feel some of the discussions to be inaccessible or unfamiliar, we invite you to go over to the Keshava Swami YouTube channel where you'll find much more universal wisdom. We also invite you to join our Wisdom That Breeds community, where we're gathering individuals who want to make the world a more beautiful place by sharing wisdom. During the entire course of devotional service, since the Supreme Lord is absolute, the form within the heart of a devotee, the form in the temple, and the original form in Vaikuntha, Vrindavan, Dham are all the same. They are non-different from one another. Srila Prabhupada ki. Mark Twain has a famous quote, "The two most important days in your life, the day you're born and the day you find out why." But actually for a devotee, the two most important days in life might be the day you find out why you're born and the day you see the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that is the day that Dhruva Maharaj has now reached. Dhruva Maharaj was seeing the Supreme Personality of Godhead within his mind. But because he was so focused on the Lord in his mind, this is pretty far out, he was so focused on the Lord in his mind that he wouldn't open his eyes. The Lord was kind of standing there waiting, but Dhruva Maharaj's eyes were closed because he was so focused on the Lord within himself. And therefore the Lord had to use a tactic. He was thinking like, how am I going to get him to open his eyes? I'm here, I'm right in front of him. But Dhruva Maharaj was so focused, and therefore the Lord thought the only thing I can do is I have to disappear from his mind, because only then will he open his eyes and then he'll see that I'm actually right in front of him. So Dhruva Maharaj, this verse is really talking about unbreakable focus. Actually, our focus is all over the place. Our mind is in 100 places. They say we were nowhere, then we advanced, then we became somewhere, then we got technology and now we're everywhere. And because we're constantly on our technology, we're always elsewhere. And because we're constantly elsewhere, we're practically nowhere. And that's the story of life. People's mind is all over the place. To focus on one thing now, very, very difficult. Human beings now officially have the record. They have the record minimum attention span, even less than a goldfish. 7 seconds. Then the mind is going somewhere else. But Dhruva Maharaj was showing an incredible focus. Dhruva Maharaj's story is amazing. The Bhagavatam is very strategic. Just like when we're teaching, then we always say something, but then immediately, generally, we follow it with an example, a story, isn't it? Like Prabhupada would do that. He would make a philosophical point, and then he would give a story from Shastra. Or he would give a story of an experience from his own life. Or he would give a story of Akbar and Birbal. Prabhupada even gave a story of Charlie Chaplin. You know that one? Charlie Chaplin in one sketch, he's kind of sitting down and he's wearing this kind of suit. So someone ties his suit down to play a trick on him. So as soon as he stands up, the suit completely rips. So half of his suit is ripped from the back. So it's kind of embarrassing. You go to a party and, you know, your whole suit is ripped. So Charlie Chaplin just goes onto the dance floor and he starts dancing even more enthusiastically in front of everyone. And everyone kind of thinks, wow, this must be the new trend. This must be a new discovery, to rip your suit at the back like this and to dance enthusiastically. And so everyone, instead of thinking he's a fool, everyone starts following along with him. And Prabhupada used that story to explain that if you're enthusiastic, if you're confident, if you're bold, then people won't think you're mad, they'll actually follow you. I tried it out actually because nowadays I'm on the airports a lot, so nearly 7 foot tall in bright orange, people tend to stare at you, So nowadays when someone stares at me, I just stare right back at them. And I just keep looking at them. And then it's very funny because at a certain moment they start looking at themselves like, oh my God, maybe there's something wrong with me. It's all a confidence game. Anyway, the point I'm making is that a teacher says a point and then gives a story. So Sridhar Swami in Bhavarta Deepika, he explains that the Bhagavatam is also structured like this. So what happens at the end of the 3rd canto is that Kapila Dev is instructing Devahuti, and he's basically talking about devotional service. He's trying to bring her to the point of understanding pure devotional service. But before understanding pure devotional service, you need to understand what is mixed devotional service. And therefore he gives 3 examples: devotion in the mode of ignorance, devotion in the mode of passion, and devotion in the mode of goodness. So he gives all the tattva. Devotion in the mode of ignorance, abhisandhaya yohimsham dambam matsaryameva va samrambhi bhinadrik bhavam mai kuryat satamasaha. He explains this is devotional service in the mode of ignorance, himsam, violence. If you think that blowing up thousands of innocent people is service to God, maybe you're performing devotional service in the mode of ignorance. Dambam, pride. Matsaryam, envy towards others. Samrambhi, if you're practicing devotional service and you're constantly angry. Then satamasaha, devotional service in the mode of ignorance. So Sridhar Swami says after Kapila Dev does this in the 3rd canto, the very first pastime in the 4th canto depicts it. Live example. Daksha, Shiva, Sati. Daksha is doing all of his devotional service but becomes so envious, so angry at Shiva unnecessarily. So Sridhar Swami says tattva and then example. Then he says devotional service in the mode of passion. That is Vishayan abhisandhaya yasha aishvaryameva va archayed archayam yovad pritag bhava sarajasaha. What is devotional service in the mode of passion? Vishayan, sense gratification. Aishvaryam, opulence. Yasha, you want fame. Pritag bhava sarajasa, this means devotional service but in passion. So Sridhar Swami says after saying this, the 2nd pastime of Canto 4 gives the live example, Dhruva. And the 3rd type of devotional service in the modes is devotional service in goodness. So, karma nirharam uddishya parasmin vatadarpanam. This is explained by Kapila Dev, that when you practice devotional service simply to remove your karma for the purpose of purification, yajet yashtavyamiti va pritag bhava sasatvata, then is considered devotional service in the mode of goodness. And so the 3rd pastime of Canto 4, Prithu, devotional service in the mode of goodness. But the common word in all 3 of these verses quoted by Kapila Dev is Pritag Bhava. Even devotional service in the mode of goodness, Pritag Bhava Sasatvata. Even devotional service in Sattva is still separatist. Pritag Bhava means separatist mentality. So therefore, when the separatist mentality is given up and one realizes, if Krishna wins, I win. If Krishna is pleased, I'm pleased. If Krishna is satisfied, I'm satisfied. There's no sense of independent agenda. And therefore, that is the point where devotional service in the mode of ignorance, passion, or goodness transcends, and it becomes devotional service in purity. Sattvam Vishuddham Vasudeva Shabditam. This is Sattvam Vishuddham, pure goodness. So Dhruva Maharaj represents devotional service in the mode of passion. And this is perhaps the most popular type of devotional service. Everyone is harboring some kind of agenda when they render service. One for Krishna, two for me. Some calculative mentality is still there. And therefore the true fruit of devotional service, Tabutan Apai Krishna, Pade Prema Dhan, is still elusive. So Dhruva Maharaj, he was doing it all for a passionate reason, and then he realized, Sthana bilasi tapasi stitoham tvam praptavan deva muni draguyam kacham vichinvan api devya ratnam swamin kritartho smivaram nayache. Sthana abhilash, I had this desire, this passionate desire that I must get a kingdom, and therefore what did I do? Tapasi stitoham, I situated myself in tapasya, serious tapasya. First month, one fruit every 3 days. Second month, only water every 6 days. Dry grass every 6 days. Third month, only water every 9 days. Fourth month, only air every 12 days. Fifth month, nothing. Completely independent of the needs of the material world. Bhagavatam says he was sucking the universe of all the energy, such that the universe and its orbit went 2.5 inches out of the normal circular motion. That is highly dangerous. It's said that if certain planets are just 1 inch or 1 centimeter closer or further away from the sun, it can cause global warming, or it can create a kind of icy meltdown. So, tapasi stitoham, he did it. Someone may say, how was it that Dhruva could do it at 5 years old? So much tapasya. Everyone is carrying a capacity. So Vishnu Purana actually mentions that Dhruva in his previous life was a tapasvi. He was a sage. And as he was doing his tapasya, it said that a king and his retinue walked past the sage. And Dhruva Maharaj just in that life opened his eyes and he saw the royal retinue. And just a thought went in his mind, oh, that would be nice. It's quiet. So Vishnu Purana says then he had to come back in this life and experience it all. Tapasi stitoham, so he was doing this tapasya. Tvam praptavan, but then he got it. He got what he was looking for. Muni draguyan, deva muni draguyam. Even the devas and the munis don't get this. Very difficult to get. The darshan of the Lord, yeah, he got it. Because he followed instructions. There were two, Suniti, Suruchi. So the acharyas say Suniti means the wise path. Suruchi means the enjoyable path. If you follow the wise path, then Dhruva, who is born, determination. And if Dhruva is born, then the destination is Vaikuntha. So that's the line. Suniti, gives rise to spiritual determination, and spiritual determination gives rise to Vaikuntha. But if you follow Suruchi, the path that feels good now, don't give up what you want most for what feels good now. But if you follow what feels good now, then that gives rise to Uttam. Uttam means the highest material pleasure. And the net result of all of that is Uttam dies, death. That's take your pick, whichever one you want to go for. So Tvam Praptavan, he got it because he followed Suniti. Deva Muni Draguyam, something which is very difficult. And then what was his mature realization? Kacham Vichinvan. I was looking for broken glass. Apidivya Ratnam. And instead I got a valuable jewel. It's very interesting. It's amazing, in that moment he just spontaneously comes up with a prayer, but it's so deep. Why does he compare material benedictions to broken glass and the actual fruit to a valuable jewel, a touchstone? Why? Number one, because broken glass looks like a jewel from far. Kind of shines, kind of reflects the light, kind of looks interesting. Yeah. Material things are like that. They look good from far. Apparently there's a story that Bill Gates, when God appeared before Bill Gates and said, do you want to see heaven or do you want to see hell? He said, I want to see heaven. So God gave Bill Gates a vision of heaven. And it was all very quiet. It was all very serene. There were angels playing harpsichords. So he called God. He said, it's pretty boring up here. Can you show me hell? So God gave him a vision of hell. So in hell, everyone was having a party. So he thought, this is amazing. God said, where do you want to go, heaven or hell? He said, I'll stay in hell. So God disappeared, hell. And then within one moment, boom, these gremlins came out and started beating him like anything. So he started calling out to God. He said, God, there must be a mistake. What happened here? God said, no, you saw the right thing. It was only a screensaver. I don't know if you have a screensaver on your computer. But it looks, the moment you move your mouse just a little bit, boom, it disappears. So material benedictions are like that. They look like something, but there's something very, very different. So he compares it, kacham, it's like glass. The second reason why he compares material benedictions to glass, broken glass, is because broken glass is completely useless. Some things, when they're broken, you can still salvage it, still use it. Like Hadai Pran's broken Birkenstocks. It's still going, still going, with a bit of electric tape. It goes on. Some things, when they're broken, you can still salvage it and get something good from it. But broken glass, absolutely useless. Can't do anything with it. Therefore, he says material benedictions are like broken glass. They don't even have a stopgap utility. Just useless. And the third reason he compares material benedictions to broken glass is because not only are they just resembling the real thing, not only don't they have much utility at all, but broken glass is actually incredibly dangerous. Therefore, if someone would break some glass, immediately we sweep it up. So material benedictions are like that. Not only are they an imitation, not only do they don't have utility, but they're actually very, very dangerous. Because in pursuance of and absorption in material things, you actually end up making your life miserable. Yehi samsparsha ja bhoga dukkayonaya evate adyantavanta konteya nateshu ramate Buddha. If you're intelligent, if you're Buddha, nateshu ramate, then don't play. Don't play with the material energy, because samsparsha jaboga, any enjoyment that's gained from contact of the senses with material things, dukkha yoni, is simply the womb of distress. Sukha is the womb of dukkha. Material pleasure is the womb within which dukkha is born. And therefore, if you're wise, nateshu ramate Buddha, don't get involved, because otherwise you might find yourself very hurt. So Dhruva Maharaj realized this. Kacham vichinvan api divya ratnam. I was looking for broken glass, but I got a jewel. Swamin kritartho smivaram nayache. And therefore now I don't need anything. I'm completely satisfied. All my desires are fulfilled. As Prabhupada said in the final days, kuch ichha nahi. No more desires. Totally satisfied. The moment you can put your hand up and say, Krishna, I don't want to change one thing in my life. It's absolutely perfect. Nothing to change, nothing to adjust, nothing to remove, nothing to add. It's perfect. And then you can understand that we're actually Krishna conscious. So Dhruva Maharaj got to that point. And here the thrust of the verse is that he was meditating, because his meditation on the Lord was so strong, undiverted. Then the Lord had to manifest that form externally. In the 3rd canto, there's another very famous verse that Prabhupada used to quote. Tvam bhakti yoga paribhavitarit saroja ase shruta shita pato nanunatha pumsham yad yad dhiya ta urugaya vibhavayanti tad tad vapu pranayase sadanugrahaya. Brahma makes this prayer. He says, Yad Yad Dhiya, whichever form of the Lord you meditate on, without diverting your attention anywhere else, Tad Tad Vapu Pranayase, that very form will one day appear before your eyes, Madanugrahaya, by the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So everything begins in the mind. Whatever one meditates on, dhyayato vishayan pumsha sangaste supajayate sangat sanjayate kama kama krodho vijayate krodhat bhavati sammoha sammoha smriti vibhrama smriti bhramsad buddhi nasho buddhi nashat pranashyati. This is basically the material downfall. Begins with dhyan, but dhyan on the wrong thing. Then leads to attachment. Then attachment leads to lust. Then the lust leads to anger. Because if you get it, you're frustrated because it wasn't good, and if you don't get it, you're frustrated. And then anger leads to sammoha, illusion, delusion. And sammoha leads to smriti, smriti bhramsad, loss of one's memory, and loss of memory, pranashyati, fall down. That's the psychological order of fall down. Meditation, attachment, lust, anger, delusion, loss of memory, fall down. But if you start from dhyan, but dhyan on the right thing, dhyan on Krishna, then what happens? The dhyan leads to attachment for Krishna. And attachment for Krishna is diametrically opposed to lust. That Krishnendriya priti icha dhare premanam. So instead of meditation, attachment, lust, it becomes meditation, attachment, love. And instead of lust, which leads to anger, love, which leads to satisfaction. Santushta satatam yogi yatatma dridanaschaya. Santushta, complete satisfaction. And then satisfaction, instead of that lust leading to anger and leading to delusion, satisfaction leads to enlightenment. And enlightenment leads to, instead of a loss of one's memory, a regaining of one's memory. I am a spirit soul, an eternal servant of Krishna. And instead of that loss of memory leading to downfall, that regaining of one's memory, that regaining of one's Krishna consciousness, that turning back to Krishna leads to one's elevation. So, same thing. But it all begins with dhyan. What does one meditate on? And even when one is meditating on the right thing, the problem is the dhyan is not concentrated enough. It's becoming diverted by too many things. And therefore that kind of dhyan doesn't lead to the goal of Krishna consciousness. So here, Dhruva Maharaj is not just telling us, number one, the right thing to meditate on, but he's also teaching us the intensity with which that meditation has to occur. Undiverted. Mamchayo vyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatityetan brahmabhuyaya kalpate. If you want to go beyond the modes, you want to go beyond devotional service in the modes, it has to be avyabhicharini, which means undiverted. For example, Haridas Thakur, he was never diverted. The three biggest things that divert one in their life, generally, sense gratification, suffering, and sickness. Now, if you look at Haridas Thakur's life, he faced those three things to the superlative degree. Sense gratification. I mean, Maya personified came in front of him. I mean, it doesn't get more intense than that. But he was undiverted. Suffering. Beaten in 22 marketplaces. This is significant because it's a suffering which is just not physical. It's a suffering in which you're humiliated publicly. What's harder? Physical suffering or public humiliation? Haridas Thakur had both side by side, to show that he faced suffering to a superlative degree. And in his final days, sickness. But when Mahaprabhu told him, you're sick, you can reduce your rounds, he said, no, my real illness is that I have no taste. So, sickness, sense gratification, and suffering are the three usual suspects which cause one's meditation on the spiritual energy to become compromised. And therefore, Haridas Thakur shows how you can face those three things to the superlative degree. And if you're not diverted, then just as the Lord appeared before Dhruva Maharaj, the Lord appeared before Haridas Thakur as Siddha Bakul. Haridas Thakur, who was blocked from going to see Jagannath, the walking Jagannath, was coming in front of him because in his mind he was constantly meditating on the Supreme Lord. So This is the prospect of Krishna consciousness. The two most important days. The day you figure out why you're here, and the day you actually meet the person that you're looking for. And Dhruva Maharaj shows us that it's only that undiverted attention, that razor-sharp focus, vyavasayatmika buddhi ekeha guru nandana, that one has to wake up in the morning and say, I'm not going to blow it again. I blew it previously because I got distracted, I got sidetracked, my attention went somewhere else. Sometimes this story is given of a man who's in a prison courtyard and he wants to get out, and there's a door, but he doesn't know where the door is, and he's blindfolded. So then he realizes, okay, there's one way to do this. Just keep walking straight and eventually you'll meet a wall. And then if you just keep feeling the wall, then eventually you have to come to the door. It's a good strategy. So he does it, and it's a massive courtyard. So imagine, there's only one door here. So he's feeling the wall. And it's mentioned that every time he's about to come to the door, he gets an itch on his nose. So he takes his hand off the wall for a moment, he itches his nose, and then he puts his hand, but he doesn't realize he's missed the door. And then he has to go around all over again. And then when he comes to the door again, there's some disturbance, and he lifts it, and then he has to go around all over again. So that's the condition of the living entity. Durlabhamanava janama labhya samsade. It's amazing to think. We don't know how many times, how many lifetimes it took to get to this point. And then if we drag our feet or divert our attention, it's agonizing. So Dhruva Maharaj says, don't look back now. Just focus completely. And then that object of focus that's cherished within your mind will one day appear before you. The most important day in your life. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So, do we have time? Questions? You choose.
We were speaking about the devotional service of the three modes, and you gave the example from the fourth canto of each mode. Kapila Dev also speaks about Nirguna Bhakti. Could you speak about an example of Nirguna Bhakti?
So the whole Bhagavatam is meant for that. But what is explained is that these three individuals, although they are in the modes of nature, eventually they're purified. Dhruva Maharaj is purified. Daksha, later on, after being decapitated, comes back, and then he comes in front of Shiva saying his envy has now disappeared. And Prithu Maharaj also goes back home, back to Godhead. So therefore, these examples don't just show devotional service in the modes of nature, but they show how the devotee can eventually realize that performing devotional service for ulterior motives will necessarily leave one dissatisfied. Savepum sham paro dharmo yato bhakti radok sajay ahaituki apratihata yayatma suprasidati. There's only one way to experience satisfaction of the soul. That is ahaituki apratihata. Only if one day you can come in front of Krishna and Krishna sees that your devotion is completely uninterrupted and completely unmotivated. So there are other examples of Shuddha Bhakti, of course. That is what the whole Bhagavatam is meant to be there for. Svayambur Narada Shambur Kumara Kapilo Manu Pralado Janako Bhishmo Balirveya Shikirveyam. So many examples of Mahajans who practice pure devotional service. So those examples are there, but these examples also show purification from the modes. And so that verse is also there. Is that okay?
Thank you very much for class. Maharaj, you mentioned, you gave us the information that why Maharaj was maintain his focus because he was a tapasvi from previous life. For someone like myself, one who is kind of distracted by, in your words, weapons of mass distraction in the technology we are surrounded, how can I practically apply this teaching from the Maharaj in my day-to-day life?
Thank you. Prabodhananda Saraswati says in one verse, Kala kalir balina indriya vairi varga Shri Bhakti margaya kanto kakoti ruddha Ha ha kvayami vikalam kimaham karomi Chaitanya chandra yadinadya kripam karoshi. So in this verse, Prabodhananda Saraswati is explaining his predicament. Kala, problem number one, I'm living in Kali Yuga. Balina Indriya Vairi Varga, problem number two, I'm living in Kali Yuga and my mind and senses are out of control. Problem number three, Shri Bhakti Marga Ihakanta Kakoti Ruddha, this beautiful path of bhakti is spiked with so many thorns that I can easily go off track. Ha ha kvayami vikalam kimaham karomi. He's looking up at the Lord and he says, what am I going to do? How do I survive? How am I going to make it? And then in the final line, he turns to Mahaprabhu. Chaitanya Chandra Yadi Nadya Kripam Karoshi. He says, there's only one solution. You need the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. There's no other way you can do it in this age. Only Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu can do it. The devotees in Scotland, in the north of England, they wanted to tell everyone that Gauranga is the only hope, so they had a Gauranga campaign. So they used to put Gauranga, the name, everywhere. So one of their strategies, in the middle of the night, they would go to motorway, highway bridges, and they would paint huge Gauranga. So if you go even to the UK today, on the motorways, these motorway bridges, everyone's driving, it says Gauranga. So once I was on doing Sankirtan and I stopped one man, I gave him a book and I said, can you say Gauranga? He said, Gauranga. Gauranga. I know Gauranga. I said, you know Gauranga? He said, yeah, that's that company that makes all the motorway bridges. I said, well, exactly. But then I thought, yes, Mahaprabhu creates a bridge. Bridge preaching. So Mahaprabhu creates the bridge. So actually, really speaking, it's only the Sankirtan movement. Therefore, if one serves the name and one chants the name, which is basically the sum and substance of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement. Yatha yatha gaura padara vindeta bhaktim krita punya rasi. Prabodhananda Saraswati says, if one dives into the ocean of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes, then one day they will emerge on the banks of Sri Vrindavan Dham. In other words, there's no way to get to Sri Vrindavan Dham unless you absorb yourself in the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes are going on even today. Adyapiha Shay Leela Kaha Gaura Roy Kona Kona Bhagyavan Dekhi Bada Boy. But you have to become fortunate. If one is fortunate and one says, I'm going to be alive, I'm going to be active, I'm going to be involved, I'm going to be absorbed in the greatest movement. When I wake up in the morning, I don't want to divert my attention anywhere away from the greatest movement on earth. Then such a person, because they dive into those pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they arrive in Sri Vrindavan Dham. Otherwise, you can't make it. Therefore, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his followers, they are the hope. So that's what it is. Okay.
Krishna Maharaj, firstly, it's so nice to have you back here in New York City. It's our great fortune to have the association with such a wonderful person who's showing the example of going for the jewel and not the broken pieces of glass. You actually answered my first question regarding how to handle the problem of when we become a devotee, the broken pieces of glass become more subtle. And so it becomes more difficult to tell the difference between them. And you mentioned how to flip it instead of meditating on those subtle things, you meditate on Krishna, and that solves the problem. And so it brought me to another question that sometimes it's perceived, meditation on Krishna is a very vague thing, and sometimes people might feel underqualified for that, or some might feel overqualified for that. But to my understanding, there's different levels and stages of that. So I'm wondering if maybe you could help us understand, based on the position we are at in our devotional service, how to incorporate that within our life, our spiritual life.
Thank you so much. Sorry. So in Madhurya Kadambini is very interesting. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is talking about the progression to prema. So what he says is that when one reaches nishta, in other words, enough purification has gone on in the heart, and then it becomes the platform from which to experience Krishna. Of course, even in nishta, actually, even up till bhava, it's not that all anarthas are gone. There's still some are remaining, but the majority have disappeared. So he says, from nishta you can get ruchi, taste. And he says there are two types of taste: apekshani ruchi and anapekshani ruchi. Apekshani ruchi means you have taste for a particular anga of devotional service. But then he says there is a higher type of ruchi where you don't care which anga of devotional service it is. You always get taste. And then he says when it progresses, then it becomes ashakti. And when it becomes ashakti, then you're not actually getting taste from the service. You're getting taste from the object. In other words, now it becomes about Krishna, not the activity. And he says when that ashakti matures even more, then it becomes bhava. And in bhava, Krishna appears within one's meditation. And then from bhava it becomes prema, and Krishna then appears before someone. Yeah. So this is very interesting because it also tells us, gives us a clue. In our devotional progression, generally what happens is that we first have to get attracted to a service. Then what happens is we get attracted to devotional service in general when we advance more. And then when we advance even more, we're not even just attracted to devotional service, but we're attracted to the person whom we're serving. And then When that becomes mature, then Krishna appears. So you can use this insight of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur to also say, in the beginning, to meditate on Krishna may seem very, very far away. But instead what you can do is meditate on devotional service. One Vaishnava said, I don't know how much love I have for Krishna, but I love to do devotional service. If you can say, I love to serve, then what happens is that meditation on devotional service will lead eventually to a purification which will help you to meditate on the object of devotional service. And then meditation on the object of devotional service, yad yad dhiya ta urugaya vibhavayanti tad tad vapu, then that object will appear. So that's generally the progression, that in the beginning, meditate on devotion. It's an easier meditation. Why did Srila Prabhupada structure the Krishna consciousness movement in such a way that is full of service? You don't have to wait long before you step into a Hare Krishna temple and it's like, do you want to do some service? It's like the place is full of service. Too much service sometimes. But it's good because that's where we're at. The more we meditate on service, then it matures into a meditation on Krishna. So, if you look at the 9 stages of prema, then you can say Shraddha, Sadhu Sangha. In this stage of devotional service, one is really just connecting with the identity of being in Krishna consciousness. Yeah, I'm part of the Hare Krishnas, I'm with those guys. It's just an identity. But then when it goes to Bhajana Kriya, Anartha Nivritti, Nishta, and Ruchi, these are all about the process. Now the process comes to the forefront. But then from Ashakti, Bhava, and Prema, what then becomes important is the person. So that if you generally see how someone advances in their devotional service, first their bhakti is like cultural bhakti. It's like an identity. When they get more serious, it becomes committed bhakti. Then it's about the process. But when it becomes more advanced, then it becomes confidential bhakti, where it's all about Krishna. So, but to get there, first we have to purify ourselves through devotional service. Therefore, what is that? Na bhavet grayam indriye. How does that verse start? How does it start? Ata Shri Krishna namadi na bhavet grayam indriye sevan mukhe hi jivado svayameva spuratya. Krishna's name, fame, form, qualities, na bhavet. No way you can perceive it with blunt material senses. Therefore, seva, serve, beginning with the tongue. You can do that. Yes, easy to start, just with the tongue. And then the senses become spiritualized. Then you can meditate on Krishna. Does that? I don't know if that helps. All right. Okay, so I think we're over time. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.